Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me one quick favor, see that little black subscribe button on the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Really does help this channel grow, my audience grow, and I appreciate it more than you know. Also, quick thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet $50 on any game. Get up to $1,111 in free bets courtesy of the Betfred Sportsbook. Thank you again. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Finally, first half of the show, let's wrap with a little conversation on the LSU Tigers, okay? So LSU, I think anybody who's listened to this show or the Aaron Torres pod knows I'm a huge Brian Kelly guy, okay? I was actually at UConn when Brian Kelly was at Cincinnati, so I saw him kind of climb up the ladder. I always thought that he had, he got a raw deal at Notre Dame. Just felt, oh, God, Notre Dame's always overrated. It's like, no. Notre Dame's not overrated. Like in 2023 or 2022 or 2021 or whenever Brian Kelly was there, like just think about it. A small Catholic school in Indiana with no natural recruiting base, they shouldn't be competing with Alabama and Ohio State and Clemson and playing in the playoff with them. So I always thought Brian Kelly was underrated. He goes to LSU, year one, wins 10 games. Now, this year, a lot of hype about him. The SEC media poll has not come out yet, although I think he will be favored. And the over-under win total in the Betfred Sportsbook for the LSU Tigers is 9.5. Now, I will say I find that number a little bit interesting because of the fact that, again, Alabama is at 10.5. Most people think LSU is better. LSU is only at 9.5. Does the Betfred Sportsbook know something that we don't? I don't know, but let's talk a little bit about LSU. In terms of this team, I get why people like them. If you think LSU is the best team in the SEC West, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you're wrong. Jaden Daniels is the most established returning quarterback in the SEC. So in a year where Georgia is breaking in a new quarterback, Alabama, it's July, and no one outside of that building knows who Alabama's starting quarterback is. LSU has a guy that is established through for 3,000 yards last year, 17 touchdowns, rushed for another 800. He was awesome. The skill position talent around him, we're not projecting like I sort of did at Alabama there a minute ago. Josh Williams is back, second leading rusher last year behind Jaden Daniels. They added a couple guys in the portal, including Logan Diggs, ironically, or maybe not ironically, played for Brian Kelly at Notre Dame for a year, he played at Notre Dame, transfers to play for the former Notre Dame head coach, Brian Kelly. And then the wide receiver room, I mentioned it with Texas A&M earlier. Texas A&M may have the best wide receiver room, but if they don't, it is because LSU's is so freaking deep. You go back to last year, Malik Neighbor, 72 catches, 1,000 yards, 3 TDs. Brian Thomas, 31 catches, 5 TDs. Kyron Lacey, 24 catches, had a great spring game. They added Aaron Anderson, a former high 4-star at Alabama, transferred to LSU. Mason Taylor, he was the guy that made that game-winning play for LSU against Alabama as a true freshman tight end. He is back, 46 catches a year ago, 3 touchdowns. Great receiving core, great running back room. O-line was young last year. I think that was the most impressive thing about Brian Kelly's success in year one. I don't think people realized that offensive line was starting 2 true freshmen at offensive tackle, yet they still managed to win 10 games. And then defensively, look, the defense is elite, right? The defense has playmakers all over the field. Harold Perkins was the breakout star of college football last year. 13 tackles for loss, 7.5 sacks. You go on down the list. Mason Smith obviously got injured last season, unfortunately, but a year before was phenomenal as a true freshman, a guy who had 5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks in 2021. Again, unfortunately got hurt. I mentioned Harold Perkins. Mekhi Wingo is back along that defensive front. At linebacker, plenty of depth, plenty of experience. Omar Speights transfers in from Oregon State, where he was an all Pac-12 guy. And then the portal does a very good job of filling gaps as well. I mentioned Omar Speights, but also it's worth noting, Denver Harris transfers in from Texas A&M. Now, he was a little bit of a problem at A&M, but Brian Kelly is a guy that I think can keep him in line. Deuce Chestnut, another defensive back, transferred in. He's in from Syracuse. And so you look at this group, it is really talented. As a matter of fact, I thought I heard something pretty interesting. Aaron Murray, obviously former Georgia Bulldog. He said this on his podcast. I thought it was a great way to put it. He said LSU's starting 22 is the best in the SEC. And I don't think I can disagree with it. Experience at quarterback, experience at wide receiver, experience on the offensive line, experience on the defensive front, experience all over the defense, as a matter of fact. I guess my concerns with LSU going forward would be twofold. One, I do worry about the depth. And I know LSU fans are going to say, BK's crushed it, Brian Kelly has crushed it, and he's crushed it in the portal as well. And I think you could argue in the portal, we spent so much time talking Deion Sanders and Lincoln Riley, Hugh Freeze this offseason. I think you'd argue that nobody was better in the portal than Brian Kelly and LSU at plugging holes each of the last 2 years. But they're plugging holes because there were a lot of misses late in the Ed Orgeron era in recruiting. Now, part of that is you're recruiting in a season during COVID. You can't get your eyes on people. You don't have kids on campus. I get it. That's part of the deal. But you did miss on a lot of kids. You've lost a lot of kids through the years, and you have to go to the portal because there are holes on your roster. So that's the concern to me. And then the other concern is the schedule. I think Alabama's breaks very nicely. As I said, Alabama has a very manageable schedule. LSU is actually the exact opposite. You look at LSU, how about this? 4 of their first 6 games are away from Baton Rouge. I mean, come on, this is the SEC. Everyone tells me how easy SEC schedules are. 4 of the first 6 are away from Baton Rouge. Most importantly, they play Florida State in week 1 in Orlando. That's not only the game of week 1, that might be the game of the year. That concerns me because that's a brutal opener. Then at Mississippi State, Arkansas, at Ole Miss, at Missouri to open SEC play. And again, I get it. Those are games you're supposed to win if you're LSU. But 3 out of your first 4 on the road is not easy. And never forget, they end the year with Alabama on the road. And that's in addition to Florida and A&M at home, which are games I think they should take care of. Ultimately, when it comes to LSU, listen, I'll be blunt. I like this team. I have enough concerns where I just won't be betting. The over-under, again, is 9.5 in the Betfred Sportsbook. I'd probably lean over at 10-2, but I don't think they're going 11-1. I don't think they're going 12-0. And that number 9.5 is very interesting to me. It just feels like it's purposefully low. Do the bettors know something that we don't? Do the sports books know something that we don't? And is it possible we're just overrating LSU a little bit? I've talked about it on the Aaron Torres pod. Everybody that wants to tear down Alabama and elevate LSU. Listen, LSU was unbelievable last year. I love Brian Kelly. But is this a different team and a different conversation if that Jaden Daniels pass to Mason Taylor goes incomplete? Like, in other words, does that one play change everything at how we look at these two teams going into the season? I think LSU goes 10-2, but this is a stay away for me.